It is 1690 in Scotland, and a single whisper from a neighbour is deadlier than the freezing winter.
You kneel in the grey sludge of the freezing River Tay, your woolen plaids perpetually soaked with icy, foul-smelling water. Beside you, a row of gaunt women scrub the magistrate's linen in terrifying silence. You plunge your hands into a wooden tub of caustic lye soap brewed from sheep fat and wood ash. It strips the grease from the cloth, but burns the skin on your knuckles raw. Your hands throb violently, covered in agonizing chilblains that make every movement a sickening struggle. A former midwife pushed to the freezing forest edge, you are reduced to this brutal labor. To bleach the laird's expensive shirts, you are forced to collect buckets of stale chamber pot urine from wealthy estates. The thick ammonia stench rises in the biting wind, making your eyes water constantly. Every woman at this washing stream scratches endlessly at the lice infesting their heavy wool clothes. It is a crawling reminder of the typhus fever currently haunting your parish, leaving hollow-eyed adults wasting away. You haul sloshing wooden tubs of wet linen up the steep cobbled wynds of Edinburgh. With every agonizing step, the cartilage in your spine grinds under the crushing weight. You cannot stop. If you collapse and resort to begging for oats, the looming 1698 Vagabond Act dictates you could be legally enslaved in a coal mine. Survival means enduring the rotting smell of the city and never drawing attention. But in a suffocating famine, unnoticed survival is about to become impossible. The 1690s have brought the 7 ill years, a severe famine turning your parish into a purgatory of walking corpses. You drag yourself back to a dirt floor hovel, choked with the acrid smoke of a central peat fire that permanently stains your deeply lined face and slowly rots your lungs. Your daily ration is nothing but a handful of moldy, stone-ground oats. Chewing leaves harsh grit in your mouth and painfully wears down your remaining teeth. Outside in the freezing mud, starving mothers boil nettles and rotten shoe leather, their faces locked in silent, frantic despair. But starvation is not the only predator. Paranoia festers heavily in the damp air. You draw drinking water from the same sluggish burn where butchers dump sheep intestines and tanners wash chemical-soaked hides. Disease breeds easily, but the frightened village blames something darker. The Kirk elders have appointed searchers who creep through the shadows at night. They peer through your shuttered windows, watching closely to ensure you aren't practicing forbidden folk-healing. You hold your breath in the freezing dark, your chest tight with anxiety. The church's grip tightens on exhausted adults. Yesterday, you watched the local Kirk elders publicly humiliate a young mother on the stool of repentance for simply missing Sabbath. Her weeping echoed violently off the cold stone walls. You pull your damp wool plaid tighter. In this atmosphere of religious terror, a simple tavern rumor is a definitive death sentence. Bureaucratic madness is creeping toward your door. You swallow the gritty ash in your throat as town bailies march into the market square. Institutional cruelty has escalated, fueled by cold coin. As a former midwife, you know the terrifying truth. Magistrates eagerly pay John Kincaid, a notorious witch-pricker, £20 Scots to discover a devil's mark on starving women. Panic ripples through the haggard crowd. You clutch your lye-burned hands to your chest, retreating into the shadows. The hunt has become a lucrative bureaucracy. At the village cross, a heavy silence falls. You watch the fraudulent witchfinder thrust a 3-inch brass pin deep into a frightened woman's thigh to prove she feels no pain. Your stomach twists with dread because you know the cruel mechanical secret. The needle is a fake, designed to seamlessly retract into its hollow handle. But you dare not speak out. Magistrates recently locked a rusted iron muzzle, a scold's bridle with a spiked tongue depressor, onto a fellow washerwoman's head simply because she argued with a merchant. You clamp your jaw shut, terrified of the iron cage tearing at your own mouth. The nightmare accelerates. Those who refuse to confess face the sleep deprivation torture known as waking. You recall town guards forcing a frail 70-year-old grandmother to march across a freezing floor for 5 agonizing days until her mind shattered. You are already a target. Bailey's previously threatened you with violent branding and banishment for practicing midwifery without the minister's blessing. Tonight, barricading your dirt floor hovel against the wind, you freeze in sheer terror. You hear the unmistakable clanking of iron chains, halting right outside your threshold. You sit in suffocating dark, a heavy hagstone, a flint with a natural hole, pressing coldly against your collarbone on a dirty leather thong. It is your only fragile defense against the nightmares. Your mind is violently pulled back to your days as a midwife, haunted by the sickening smell of puerperal fever. You remember mothers succumbing to the infection, their skin burning while the village watched in helpless terror. To dull the sheer agony of a complex birth, all you could offer a screaming woman was a filthy rag soaked in cheap ale and leather to bite down on. But the ale was never enough. You close your eyes, unable to unsee the barber surgeon entering the claustrophobic birthing room. Your hands shake as you recall the heavy iron craniotomy tools he unpacked to save a bleeding, exhausted mother during a failed delivery. You averted your gaze, the mother's desperate sobbing breaking your spirit. The psychological grind of those rooms was absolute. You once sat awake for 3 nights, physically restraining a new mother driven completely mad by blood loss as postpartum psychosis took hold. Kirk elders casually dismissed the wailing of these traumatized women, grieving the horrific losses of the chin cough as simply God's will. Now, medical horrors mutate into a daily paranoid grind. You recently watched a family writhe from St. Anthony's fire after eating rye bread infected with toxic ergot fungus. Terrified neighbors immediately blamed your curses. Trapped in this downward spiral, every night you frantically run raw hands over your aging body, terrified a new mole will be declared an insensitive witch's mark. You walk past the looming shadows of the Edinburgh Tollbooth, the suffocating stench of raw sewage and death hanging thick in the freezing air. You know the accused adult women inside are chained to damp, unforgiving stone walls for months. Their silent, hollow eyes haunt your waking moments. But the true horror is the calculated bureaucratic aftermath that follows the pyres. The ashes settle. The cruelty is meticulously accounted for in the town ledger. When they burned poor Galis last month, there was no time for solemn grief. Her devastated family was immediately handed a heavy bill for the peat, tar, and executioner's extensive travel expenses. The economy of panic thrives in the darkness.
Are you certain this is all of it?
You watch the local blacksmith grow notoriously rich, charging the town council a massive premium for crafting heavy iron chains used to secure the innocent. But it does not end when the flames die. As dawn breaks, you avert your eyes from a sickening sight. Desperate town scavengers are sifting through the greasy, charred ashes of the executed. They violently dig through the remains just to steal scorched iron execution chains to sell as scrap. The living are trapped in this cycle of mechanical exploitation. Yesterday, you witnessed an exhausted widow forced to take the terrifying oath of purgation. Her raw hands trembled against a heavy iron Bible as she swore she didn't curse her neighbor's ruined livestock. You cannot speak out. Suing for slander costs more shillings than a washerwoman earns in a decade, leaving you entirely defenseless against ruinous gossip. In the dead of night, freezing wind howls through the cracks of your damp hut. You sit alone by the dying peat fire, soot-stained fingers trembling as you frantically tie illegal crosses made of rowan wood and red thread to your ragged dress. It is a desperate, forbidden charm to ward off malicious spirits and the far more dangerous eyes of your neighbors. You secretly seine your cramped space, burning dried juniper branches in hopes that the blinding smoke will cleanse the disease brought by the winter. Death is a suffocating companion. When your fellow washerwoman died of the pox last week, You had to smash a temporary hole in the stone wall to remove her body. It was a terrifying corpse door, driven by the superstitious fear that if she went out the front threshold, her ghost would know the way back in. The fear of the unseen paralyzes this village, just as much as the freezing sludge. Yet starving women still creep to the edge of the forest to find you. They pay you with a pathetic handful of stolen meal, begging you to read shapes in their hearth ashes to see if missing husbands will return from the sea. You look into their hollow eyes and see your own reflection. Despite the absolute terror, the biting cold, and the constant threat of the pyre, you watch these outcast women share meager rations in the shadows. There is no glorious rebellion here. There is only a silent, unbreakable will to endure the sheer madness of men. You pull your heavy woolen plaid tight against the biting draft. The ashes settle, but tomorrow the freezing, washing stream awaits.